Here's a number buried inside 3 pages of Pentagon analysis that should make every American deeply uncomfortable. At current burn rates, U.S. interceptor missile stockpiles in the Middle East theater are heading toward effective depletion. Not someday, not in a hypothetical future conflict. Now, in the middle of an active war where drones and missiles arrive in waves every single night. And before you file this under defense procurement problem, stop. This isn't about ordering more missiles. This is about the collapse of the entire defensive architecture that American military power in the Middle East depends on. The consequences don't stay in the region. They reach directly into the one strategic competition the Pentagon has spent a decade insisting was its top priority: China. Let's start with the math, because the math is what makes this impossible to ignore. Every night, Iranian forces and their proxies send coordinated waves of drones and missiles at American bases across the region. The attacks aren't random. They're engineered to create a specific outcome, forcing the United States into a defensive posture it cannot maintain indefinitely. The weapons coming in are cheap. A Shad drone costs somewhere around $50,000, maybe less at scale. It's not sophisticated. One defense analyst called it a flying lawnmower with explosives. But here's the thing about flying lawnmowers: they work. They fly hundreds of kilometers and they force a response. To intercept one, the US fires back with a Patriot PAC-2 missile that costs $3 million. PAC-2 has questionable effectiveness against small, low-flying drones, so often the military reaches for PAC-3 instead. $4 million per shot, cruise missile inbound. SM-2, around $2.4 million, ballistic missile. SM-3 or THAAD-9 to $15 million per intercept. The minimum cost ratio is 60-1. Often it's 200-1. You are spending $200 for every dollar the enemy spends. And here is the part that makes this not just expensive but strategically lethal. Iran doesn't need its drones to hit anything. They just need to make you fire. Every interceptor you launch is gone. Every launch depletes the stockpile, whether the incoming drone was ever going to strike something important or not. The entire logic of their campaign isn't destruction, it's exhaustion. Drain the magazine, night after night after night, until the magazine is empty. The natural response to this is just produce more interceptors. Surge the defense industrial base, throw money at the problem. That response sounds reasonable. It is not possible. There are exactly 2 companies in the United States that manufacture Patriot interceptors: Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. Their production lines are already running near capacity. Not for this war, before this war. They were already backlogged, filling orders for NATO allies, Gulf states, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea. The global demand for interceptors already exceeded production capacity before a single Iranian drone launched in this conflict. You cannot build a new missile production facility in any time frame that matters. The process: environmental approvals, construction, equipment installation, worker training, security clearances runs a minimum of 3 to 5 years. Emergency measures might squeeze out a 10 to 20% production increase. The math requires 500%. Those are not numbers that can be bridged. Then there's the component problem, and this is where it gets geopolitically dangerous. The guidance systems in these interceptors require specialized microchips. Those chips are fabricated in Taiwan. The rocket motors and electronics require rare earth elements. China controls roughly 80% of global rare earth processing and has already threatened export restrictions in response to US actions. So the weapons America is burning through in the Middle East depend on supply chains running through the 2 countries most likely to become adversaries in the next major conflict. If Taiwan's chip production goes dark, whether from a blockade, an invasion, or even a credible threat, the interceptor production line stops. No chips, no guidance systems. No missiles, full stop. This is not a theoretical vulnerability. It's a structural dependency that borders on strategic negligence. The United States built its air defense production base on materials from China and manufacturing from Taiwan for weapons that might one day be used against China. Skilled labor compounds the problem further. Assembling guidance systems for interceptor missiles requires workers with security clearances, specialized training, and years of accumulated experience. The clearance process alone takes 6 to 12 months. Training takes longer. The defense industry shed workers for years during low production periods, and you cannot reconstruct that workforce at speed. If hiring started today, those workers wouldn't be meaningfully productive for a year. The crisis will be resolved one way or another long before any of these constraints are overcome. None of this happened by accident. It's a trap. Iran designed it, studied for it, and walked America into it with patience. For 2 decades, Iranian strategists watched the US military operate. They watched Afghanistan. They watched Iraq. They watched the pattern. Overwhelming conventional superiority, unsustainable against decentralized asymmetric pressure applied over time. They drew a simple conclusion. You don't fight America with a mirror image of American capability. You fight America with mass, with cheapness, with endurance, and you turn their technological dominance into an economic liability. The American air defense architecture Patriots, THAAD-SM series interceptors was never built for this. It was built for peer conflict, Russian cruise missiles, Chinese ballistic missiles, high-technology threats from advanced adversaries in short, intense engagements. The entire operational concept assumes a fast war, achieve. Objectives: destroy enemy capability, return to peacetime posture. The cost-exchange ratios are survivable if the shooting stops quickly. Iran isn't fighting a fast war. Iran is fighting a grinding, relentless, economically asymmetric war of attrition, exactly the kind of war that exposes every weakness in a military designed for something else. The same mismatch that produced 2 decades of frustration in Afghanistan is now playing out in the air defense context, except the consequences are measurable in real time and the stockpiles have a bottom. Now step back and look at where those stockpiles were supposed to go. The interceptors being consumed tonight over bases in Iraq and Syria were allocated to deter China. They were earmarked for Taiwan's defense. They were part of the force calculation for a potential Pacific conflict that the Pentagon has spent years insisting was the defining strategic challenge of the era. Every missile fired at a Shah drone over Al-Dafra is a missile that no longer exists for that purpose. China is watching. They are not watching passively. They are taking notes with professional precision. They are seeing that cheap drone saturation depletes American interceptor stocks faster than production can replace them. They are seeing that the production base cannot surge. They are seeing that the technological gap America spent decades cultivating has a specific, replicable vulnerability at the low end, and they are calculating how to apply those lessons to Taiwan. The opening phase of a Chinese move on Taiwan, under the scenario now being war-gamed by people who are watching this conflict very carefully, looks a lot like what Iran is doing in the Middle East right now, except scaled by an order of magnitude. Thousands of cheap drones, swarms of simple ballistic missiles, sustained, coordinated launches designed specifically to exhaust American interceptor stocks before the main effort begins. Once the air defense umbrella collapses, the real campaign starts. Iran is not just fighting a regional war. Iran is providing China a live proof of concept, a real-world demonstration, with actual American systems firing actual interceptors in actual combat conditions, that this strategy works. The demonstration is happening in the Middle East instead of the Pacific only because America's strategic attention got pulled sideways by regional entanglements and political pressure. The stockpiles are depleting. Production cannot catch up. The weapons designed to defend Taiwan are being burned against $50,000 drones, and the country watching most carefully from the outside is not asking whether this strategy works. They already know it does.